Inti causai sapa viracocha. Nukan kik son con causan.
Every stone in this city was born like a lifetime, and to dedicate it, they offered the most precious to Inti, the sun god. Inti. Did those prayers, those offerings, find acceptance? Then, in 1532, ships came over the horizon. Atahualpa brought the foreigner to him, with open arms and an open heart. But what happened after? This self-contained city, with its agricultural terraces, was built by the Incas in the 15th century, at the top of the Andes, nearly 2,400 meters above sea level. But why? Was it to protect it from its enemies? Or to be nearer to Inti, the sun god? The Incas already took care of the highlands. They cut terraces into the mountainsides, transforming steep hillsides into fruitful cropland. The terraces were built of stone, with layers of sand and dirt underneath, to prevent erosion and direct the precipitation precisely through the mountain. Each level produced its own microclimate, allowing crops such as potatoes, maize, and quinoa to flourish at varying heights. Here, nature was not conquered, it was understood. And with this balance of land and water, life and living, an empire discovered how to thrive and prosper. The Inca universe was not only the mountains, but extended to the Pacific. Here, the ocean fed their existence. Nets came up from the sea, full of life. In their own peculiar boats, they paddled the water to the land. Hands moved fast, sorting, lugging, sharing. The coast was alive with trade and talk, what the sea had given. The people brought to life. From the Pacific coast to the heights of the Andes, a network of routes carried more than goods. Fish, salt, shellfish. It carried upriver, potatoes, maize, highland textiles. The Quapacñan connected the sea and the mountains. Cusco, the heart of an empire, the center of power, faith, and order, where the highways of the Chapacñan converged, and there, in the heart of it all, was the sacred temple of the sun. Pachacuti was a ruler of an empire, but not everything could be found in this city. He looked out toward the mountains to build something beyond power. Pachacuti, whose name meant the globe shaker, collected the best thinkers and engineers in his realm. He saw not a place for conquest, but for refuge, devotion, and calm, secreted in the sacred mountains, a sacred place to get closer to Inti, the sun god. Pachacuti and his friends had chosen the spot on which Machu Picchu, the old peak, was finally to be erected. What he didn't know was that this sacred city would one day be left in silence, and that future generations would dispute if it ever even existed. The mountains were alive at the place where Machu Picchu would be. Over the centuries, the Andes had been thrust up by tremors and geological shifts, and the Inca engineers knew this danger. They saw the city would have to go with the mountain, not against it. That expertise would one day make Machu Picchu last for centuries. These massive stones weighed hundreds of kilograms, even a few tons. Inca craftsmen chiseled each block with amazing accuracy in mountain quarries in the Andes near Machu Picchu. Everything had to be perfect for the next stone to be laid. The Inca did not build their cities of ordinary walls. Stone by stone, they cut out huge blocks with remarkable precision and stuck them together without mortar. Some were four-sided, some 5, 6, even 12. They were all carved to fit together, so that walls could be made strong enough to move with the mountains themselves. In an earthquake area, such ancient engineering would have kept Machu Picchu standing for generations. Because of the Mita system, people from across the empire helped to build Machu Picchu. Farmers, stoneworkers, and craftspeople labor on the highlands for part of their existence. They moved and shaped gigantic stones with ropes, wooden rollers, and rudimentary hand tools, stones that would last for centuries. The Incas did not use the wheel in everyday life. Instead, enormous stones were transported across the mountains on wooden sleds pulled by human force. Llamas and alpacas transported supplies along the restricted Andean paths. And in the Inca civilization, everyone had a role, because it considered a dishonor not to work. This city was not built to conquer the mountains, but to live among them. They created a dream above the clouds. Here, the Incas felt they were closer to Inti, closer to the sky itself. And when Pachacuti looked upon Machu Picchu, he saw not a city, he saw the destiny of his empire. The textiles were one of the greatest riches of the Incas' world. Each of the fabrics were woven from the wool of alpacas and llamas, and contained meaning, prestige, and individuality. For the Incas, weaving was more than a craft. It was a symbol for their whole empire. Now the work was left to the most skilled women weavers of the empire. They fashioned a ceremonial robe of rare alpaca wool, dyed with sacred natural dyes, and hand-braided with thousands of knots, appropriate for an emperor. Threads of gold were woven into the fabric itself. Machu Picchu, after years of toil, sacrifice, and devotion, finally it was done. Pachacuti walked among his people, and the empire celebrated not only a city, but a dream accomplished. And in that moment, the inhabitants of the Inca Empire believed they were seeing the pinnacle of their civilization. As the sun rose over Machu Picchu, the people of the Inca Empire assembled high in the Andes. Inti was the one Pachacuti and his people gazed upon and thanked for the light, for the harvest, for the strength that has allowed us to build this city among the mountains. At last, Machu Picchu was prepared for habitation. The settlement was fed by the terraces dug out of the mountains, where quinoa, maize, and potatoes grew at various elevations. Here, the Inca people coexisted peacefully with the mountains that supported them. 4 generations later, Atahualpa still defended the legacy of Pachacuti and believed in the ancient prophecy of Viracocha, that one day, messengers would come from across the seas and bring a new age. But could a blessing become a disaster? Pizarro came with a plan in mind. The friar spoke with the Incas, seeking to gain their confidence, and went to Atahualpa in peace. But Spanish soldiers lurked around the area, waiting for the command to attack. Then came the gunshots and the cannons, weapons unknown and unheard of by the Incas. Panic spread through the crowd, and before they could grasp what was happening, Atahualpa had been captured.
In the name of God, hear our words.
Pizarro's hidden men were ready to create the devastation they wanted, and Pizarro's plan was going just fine. Within minutes, thousands of Inca warriors had been slaughtered, and Emperor Atahualpa had been taken prisoner. Now in the square, in the silence, there was only one condition left. If the Incas wanted Atahualpa to live, they would have to give over the gold and valuable artifacts of their empire to the Spaniards. For centuries, the Incas accumulated the riches of their empire, gold, jewels, and holy relics, handed down from generation to generation. Now it was all being given to the Spaniards for one purpose only, to see their emperor, Atahualpa, returned alive. But soon, they will see the gold was never enough. Pizarro and his men had not fulfilled their promises. They had carried back Atahualpa, but only his dead body. The Incas were devastated by the loss of their monarch and plunged into anarchy. The enormous kingdom was about to face a collapse from which it would never recover. This city had formerly stood in tranquility under the mountains. But with the treachery of Pizarro and his warriors, the Incas were without their emperor, and now they were falling victim to dreadful diseases carried from across the sea. The curse of faraway worlds was slowly dragging an empire to its end. These mountains were once alive, and Machu Picchu stood above the clouds like a hallowed dream. But the hidden city, too, was visited by war and plague and quiet. And in the end, the Inca people could not stay anymore. One by one, they left Machu Picchu behind, abandoning the lost city to the mountains and mist. Machu Picchu, buried in the clouds for centuries, swallowed by vegetation and forgotten by the outer world. Following the fall of the Inca Empire, the city was deserted in silence. The Spanish combed the Andes for the lost Inca strongholds and buried gold, but they never found this spot. The mountains shielded it, and the few local folks who knew of its existence kept the mystery alive. In 1911, an American adventurer called Hiram Bingham came to Peru, looking for the last stronghold of the Incas. As he traveled through isolated towns in the Andes, he heard whisperings of old ruins deep in the mountains. Most people thought the stories were legends, but one local farmer whispered about a metropolis that lay above the clouds, a city unseen by others. Bingham was led by locals down difficult jungle paths, and a little lad with a machete higher into the mist-shrouded highlands. And then through the thick foliage and the drifting clouds, finally, he saw the stone terraces of Machu Picchu. The vanished city has been found again, after almost 300 years of stillness. Machu Picchu soon caught the imagination of the whole globe. Travelers, historians, and explorers crossed continents to see the legendary city buried in the Andes. Over the years, it became one of the new 7 wonders of the world, and Peru proclaimed the entire area a protected sacred site. Even aircraft were forbidden to fly directly over it for the sake of the silence and spirit of the ancient city. Even today, with all the modern means of transportation and technology, visiting Machu Picchu is not an easy feat. Visitors may wait months for tickets and stand in enormous,